Meghan Markle and Prince Harry losing their 11th publicist in just 5 years is not just another staffing update buried in the entertainment pages. It's a slow-burning story about control, pressure, power, and the unseen cost of living inside a permanently managed narrative. When Meredith Maines, their chief communications officer, confirmed she was stepping down after barely a year in the role, it quietly confirmed what many in media, Hollywood, and royal-watching circles have whispered for a long time. Working for the Sussexes is not simply demanding. It is emotionally exhausting, strategically unstable, and often unrewarding in ways that even top-tier professionals struggle to justify. Maines wasn't a junior hire or an experiment. She was a senior figure tasked with overseeing every outward-facing aspect of Harry and Meghan's public life. From Archewell's philanthropic messaging to Netflix-related optics. From Meghan's lifestyle brand as ever to crisis management during moments of intense backlash. When someone at that level exits so quickly, it sends a signal far louder than any tabloid headline. What makes this departure even more telling is the timing. It comes just months after Emily Robinson, another communications director, left abruptly after a similarly short tenure. And it coincides with Method Communications, a US-based PR firm, ending its relationship with the Sussexes after only 7 months. In isolation, any one of these exits could be dismissed as career movement, personal choice, or bad timing. Together, they form a pattern that is increasingly difficult to explain away. 11 publicists in 5 years is not industry normal, even by Hollywood standards. And certainly not for a couple whose entire post-royal strategy depends on shaping perception, controlling narrative, and managing reputation across continents. Behind the scenes, insiders describe a working environment where expectations shift rapidly, where every headline feels like a crisis, and where the line between personal emotion and professional strategy is often blurred. One former associate described it as trying to hit a moving target, while being told the target never moved. That atmosphere only intensified after the publication of photographs showing Maines meeting with King Charles's communications secretary in London, a moment widely described as a potential peace summit between father and son. The optics of that meeting were sensitive enough, but when the images appeared in the press, it reignited long-standing tensions around leaks, trust, and control. Harry and Meghan were reportedly furious that such a private interaction became public, insisting they were not the source, yet the damage was already done. In public relations, perception matters more than intent, and the perception once again became that nothing around the Sussexes stays private for long. That perception is toxic for any communications professional because it undermines their credibility both with clients and with the institutions they're meant to liaise with. Mains's carefully worded farewell statement, full of gratitude and respect, follows the familiar script of polite exits, but seasoned observers know that such language often masks a more complicated reality. No one walks away from a high-profile, high-access role without weighing the cost of staying against the relief of leaving. Over the past year alone, the Sussexes have faced a relentless series of PR challenges that would test even the most seasoned teams. Meghan's surprise appearance at Paris Fashion Week, complete with imagery that some critics felt echoed the route Princess Diana took on the night of her death, sparked immediate backlash and accusations of poor judgment. Her appearance at Fortune's most powerful women event in Washington drew criticism not for what she said, but for how disconnected the optics felt from the message. Vanity Fair's February cover story reopened old wounds with claims from former media collaborators who suggested Meghan's behavior behind the scenes was far harsher than her public image suggests. Hollywood Reporter went even further, publishing quotes that painted Meghan as intimidating, dismissive, and domineering, while portraying Harry as charming but enabling. The Sussexes responded with counter-narratives through People magazine, offering testimonials from current and former colleagues who described kindness, professionalism, and warmth. But the problem for any PR team is not the presence of praise, it's the coexistence of radically opposing accounts. When one side says supportive leader and the other says dictator in high heels, The story stops being about facts and becomes about credibility, and that is the hardest terrain to navigate. Each new publicist inherits not just a job, but years of unresolved narratives, emotional baggage, and public skepticism. They are expected to deliver consistency in a situation defined by volatility, to protect privacy while promoting visibility, and to defend authenticity while operating inside an intensely curated brand. That contradiction alone would exhaust most professionals. Add to that the lingering shadow of the royal family, the unresolved father-son relationship between Harry and King Charles, the unspoken rivalry with Prince William, and the constant comparison between Meghan and Catherine. And the role becomes less about communications and more about emotional arbitration. Sources say Harry is often deeply affected by negative press, taking criticism personally, while Meghan is intensely focused on outcomes and optics, which can create friction when strategy requires patience rather than immediate response. In such an environment, publicists don't just manage press, they absorb stress. They become buffers between personal feelings and public messaging, often without the authority to set firm boundaries. Over time, that takes a toll. The fact that two former publicists, James Holt and Miranda Barbot, were moved into non-PR roles only reinforces the sense that the communications function itself has become a pressure cooker. The Sussexes brand was built on the promise of truth-telling, liberation from rigid royal structures, and a new, more humane way of engaging with the world. Ironically, that promise has created its own rigid framework, one in which every action must align perfectly with a carefully maintained moral narrative. Deviations are punished swiftly by public opinion, and the responsibility for correcting them falls squarely on the communications team. Hollywood insiders quietly note that while Meghan is undeniably driven and hardworking, her intolerance for mistakes can make collaboration difficult, especially when those mistakes are perceived rather than real. Others point out that Harry's desire for loyalty and protection sometimes clashes with the professional need for transparency and compromise. These dynamics don't make either of them villains, but they do make the workplace uniquely challenging. As Meredith Maines prepares to move on, with Liam Maguire stepping in to lead communications across the UK and Europe, the question is no longer who will replace her, but how long anyone can realistically stay. At some point, turnover stops being a coincidence and starts being part of the story itself. Public relations is about trust, consistency, and long-term relationship building, and those are nearly impossible to achieve when the people responsible for them are constantly changing. The Sussexes are no longer just fighting tabloid narratives or royal coldness. They are battling a growing reputation within the media industry as clients who are emotionally demanding, strategically conflicted, and difficult to satisfy. That reputation, once established, is far harder to undo than any single negative article. 11 publicists in 5 years is not just a number. It's a mirror reflecting deeper structural issues within the Sussex operation, issues that no amount of polished statements or supportive quotes can fully conceal. Until those underlying dynamics change, the cycle is likely to continue, with new faces stepping in, hoping to make a difference, and quietly stepping out once they realize the cost of trying.